All right, I'm excited to talk with Ari from Island on building the next web. Ari, it's been a minute since we've talked. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Has anything changed in the last few years?
I don't know. I feel
Um,
like it's same as it ever was, right?
yeah, just people doing their job. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, great.
Great to be
Well,
here.
so let's see. Since we talked last, I think when we first met, you're a couple years in at Island. And the thing that was interesting when we first started working together was there was this like tension around how to market this product, right? It was like almost how much attention to get or like how to build a brand and things along those lines. What do you see as the thing that has changed from was it 3 or 4 years ago? I'm not totally sure. But we'll just say a while ago to today,
Yeah.
on how you guys are thinking about building the brand and what it means to be taking Island to market. Maybe what we do before that is what is like what is your background first?
Yeah. Yeah. Good to start from there. So yeah, my name's Ari Yablok. I am the head of brand at Island. I did not come up in the marketing world. I don't have a marketing degree, or I don't even know if they do brand degrees, but I have a degree in social work. I started my career in nonprofit, working at a university with, student programming and eventually recruiting and marketing. And then I pivoted to the world of tech, which was always a passion of mine, and creative and writing. And I didn't even know what branding really was at the time. And eventually, after a couple of years working in a startup in the product content world, I got put on a branding project that like opened my mind. It was one of those big moments in my life where I'm like, oh, this is my thing. The storytelling, the world building, the diving deep into how people think and feel and work, and how products and the stories behind them are meant to land.
Hmm.
Um, and then I moved into the agency world, working for a B2B tech branding agency called Atreo out of Tel Aviv, and worked with like 50 plus star from early stage stealth startups to massive companies like JFrog and SimilarWeb and Taboola and all, and medical tech and ad tech and cyber and quantum computing and gaming and just everything. It was kind of my PhD in brand building for tech. And one day I got a new project come across my desk to name this new company that's building this thing for the world of work, that they didn't even know yet what they were going to call it, but it blew my mind, what they had envisioned and what they planned to do, which is taking the browser that everyone uses at work, but building it the right way from the start for work with all of the things that is needed and that companies typically build around it and spend a lot and hire whole teams to manage and all of that, and just building it the right way, building it into the browser itself. And luckily, I came up with the name Island, and they liked it, and it worked well. And I hopped on board to build that world from the very beginning. And I've been there for the past 5 years, and here we are.
No, I had no idea you had named Island.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I showed
Wow.
up.
Man, like like what was that pitch like? I mean, how did you
Uh,
go is like it's so you go from sort of like enterprise browser, and by the way, I mean it started as a very sales driven organization. Like this isn't product led where brand is really important. Sales led organizations are very much like, you know, this is the you know, one super soaker browser, like whatever, like some like horrible like name. And
yeah.
yeah, what was that? What was that like?
Um, in a way, it was, I shouldn't say simple, but it kind of revealed itself.
Mm,
But Mike and Dan, the co-founders, they had a kind of a very sharp and clear vision of the thing they wanted to build and how important it was going to be, and how people were going to relate to it, in terms of the buyers as well as the users. What was unique about Island is that it's a product that's bought by executives, managed by admins, and used by every employee. So it really needed to resonate on all levels to anyone who works, right? And the feel that they were trying to capture this feeling of it used to be that in order to work safely and securely, you needed to lock yourself behind in a vault or behind a cage, in a cage or behind a fence and build walls. And that's where those were the terms for these
Mm,
tools that everyone used. And what if you just built the thing that you worked on right from the start? You wouldn't need any of those walls because work would naturally go only where it's supposed to go. And what is that place where you can work and you're safe, but you're also free? You're also
mm,
not restrained. This open environment where you're safe by design. And that was where the notion of Island as a good example in our world of a place where you would feel naturally secure, but also free and open air.
mm.
And everyone kind of saw it at once. The story told itself, and luckily, you know, they were on board for turning that into really like the foundation of how we were going to approach this story, really coming from that word.
Wow. Well, and I think what it does is it does create such an emotional resonance, right? Like it creates that feeling of both peace and sovereignty,
Yeah.
which I feel like is core to the Island brand and something that really comes through today. Uh, Fast forward, like, I want to get into more of sort of those early years of working within a sales driven organization, but
Yeah.
where is Island today and how is the brand, evolved and being perceived?
Well, we've come to realize both in terms of our very ambitious plans as a company and as a product, because the more and the bigger the enterprises that we've been serving, the more we realized of what they needed and how this amazing product can help them in ways that we didn't even fully grasp. Um, and that kind of put this urgent responsibility on the brand team to match the new messages and the new ways that we are delivering value to our customers, so that those that don't even realize what's possible with Island, and that's really been a challenge from the start, that people hadn't thought of browsers as something that delivers value. It's kind of like a TV screen, like it's just where you
Yep.
turn it on and go to work. But what if that was actually an operating system, a tool that you could control and design the right way? And now we've expanded way beyond the browser to the whole industry of network security, which is something that's pretty outdated relative to the way world is working now. And of course the big fat elephant in every room, the world of AI,
Yep.
which even a few months ago was completely different than the way it is now. In terms of even the tools enterprises needed to enable and secure and govern that thing, it's a whole new thing. So you need a whole new way of governing it, and we could talk about what that means. And that's literally meetings I'm on and initiatives I'm on day to day. But it requires a brand team that could kind of understand the pace of telling, evolving messages, evolving stories, and like you mentioned from the beginning, and how we've been working recently, evolving how we communicate and how we show up without necessarily erasing the board and starting over, but simply presenting the newest and most up-to-date version of who we are, even month to month.
And I think you had just posted something on LinkedIn along these lines, right? Just sort of this idea of the continual brand launch. Um, Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so there was a blog recently written on our company blog by our brand design lead, Tommy, about how we really realized a couple of years ago, it was after we had launched, after we kind of established who we are, and things started to move really quickly, that we couldn't do this kind of like everyone stop and think for 3 months and build for another 3 months and finally publish. Like that cycle was already painful even when everyone was doing it, in years past, but it was almost it was basically impossible because of the speed and pace at which we were launching new products and the conversation in our market was changing.
Mm.
So we had to develop a way to kind of take what we had and evolve it in ways that it didn't feel like we were breaking the system, but actually improving on it or building on it.
Mm.
So we had core, fundamental elements of our visual design, of our messaging, of our tone and personality that haven't changed. But we've evolved within those frameworks to deliver new messages, to talk about new products, to even include industries, entirely new conversations that are vertical specific, which we didn't do at the start. Um, so, we've always been, for example, just to try and make it practical, like a brand that has tried to use, greens and talk about natural. And there's a deep seated story behind that related to Island being the natural environment for work as opposed to one where you have to like surgically
Mm.
plastic surgery, add tools and solutions in a way that doesn't seem right. And that world of the natural world has informed how we evolved. And our website looks nothing like it did in the beginning, but the principles behind it are everlasting, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I as the storyteller, I was heavily involved in kind of establishing here's the way we like to talk and here's the way we don't like to talk.
Mm.
Um, Something I love to say is when we didn't need to talk about risks and threats and attacks and landscape because those are only words you use when you are in a place of danger. And though the vibe we wanted to give from the start is if you put work in the right place, you're not in danger. So we don't have to have that conversation. We can have a whole new conversation. Those principles are also very core to how we talk about a product that is actually very security centered.
Mm.
And yet we're talking a lot about enablement, a lot about what your company can do, the business value that you're delivering, the user experience to security leaders, right? And that has helped us tremendously in terms of carving kind of this unique identity out for ourselves, helping us be very recognizable wherever we go.
Yeah, and I think even just the speed of how Island has evolved the brand is admirable. I mean, we saw, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I mean, it was almost like 3 full redesigns of the site last year. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, we tested a few different things. We both in terms of what design and experience worked best,
Yep.
what was creating the smoothest, visitor journey, but also how the story can be best told. And is there a better way to tell it? Is there we were talking to a lot of customers and prospects about what they knew about Island when they first engaged. Um, and we noticed gaps. We noticed things that they couldn't answer on their own that we would know where to point them on our website, but they weren't getting there.
Yep.
And obviously the homepage is the gateway to all of that. And it's kind of the, you know, the it holds kind of your identity right there and allows you to kind of navigate to where you need to go. And if people were getting stuck or people weren't getting the information they need, we needed to put things front and center. So we would surface things in the homepage, types of content. We would bring customer testimonial videos front and center as opposed to leaving it on its own page by itself. The story of what the browser is, which eventually evolved to an entire platform beyond the browser, evolved the conversation that rapidly evolved beyond security because our primary buyer wasn't just the CISO anymore. It included the CIO and that IT ecosystem. Those were major evolutions that, again, in the past, it might be like, we need to do a whole rebrand. But for us, like, no, we needed to evolve this to meet kind of these new needs.
Yeah. And I think, for us, obviously, our teams work together. It's been interesting in that you and I haven't talked in maybe like a while, right? Let's just leave it at that.
Heads
And
down.
Yeah, which I think is I mean, again, it's not, I think, out of anything other than just it is so intense in terms of the cycles that I see the teams going through, right? In terms of both brand and performance and marrying those.
Yeah.
We've been, I think, working more on the CRO side and then pairing that up with SEO and now AEO and, all of these types of things. I'm curious, and this is something that we haven't ever been able to discuss. When we bring back recommendations, because your team will go and design things, right? And it's sort of like this illustrative story. And then it's like we come back and we're like, well, here's a recommendation that we're seeing on data or whatever. Um, how do you square that? Are there times that you agree with that? Or how do you think about, because data gives us a sense of what's happening in the rear view mirror. You're obviously looking in the front view mirror. Um, when do you disagree with that, and how do you manage that tension as the sort of head of brand?
Ooh, how much time do we have? That's a meaty
Yeah,
one.
let's. I mean, we have time.
Uh, that's a question that kind of like struck in there for me because this is brand is this type of thing that's in some ways unique in the sense that the best brands are by definition doing something that isn't being done, right?
Mhm.
And data is by definition the collective understanding of what already was done and what works because it already worked somewhere else, right? And brands should be data backed. And a lot of the goals and outcomes that brands are trying to achieve are things that should be based on very solid ground and proven tactics. And it's important to kind of separate between the things that you need to do because you know they will work, or you need to set the strategy or the tactical approach based on things you know are working or data you're collecting, and then things where what you've learned is not necessarily going to inform you about what's going to work next.
Yep.
And it's important to kind of separate those two things. So, things like we were talking about, a couple of minutes ago of we need to make sure that when customers come to our site because they learned about us somewhere and now they have questions, that they get those answers in a way that seems, effortless.
Yep.
And if they're constantly leaving our site saying, yeah, but I don't get how it works, or how does the security actually fit it, whatever, any question like that, we need to get better at that. And that's not necessarily, a branding problem. That's a customer journey problem, things like that. Um, if there are times where let's say the most viable approach to, let's say, structuring a site or structuring a journey is also the most conventional and also the most obvious and also the most overdone, then we have to ask ourselves, what's the cost of doing it the conventional way? Because it might get us what we need in one sense, but it also might send completely the wrong message in the other end of how we operate as a company. And just on that note, one more, I told you this struck a nerve. Like, we have very clear goals from the start of what our brand is meant to accomplish, and one of them is we represent a new conversation in a fairly legacy landscape, right? A legacy world where there are a lot of very well established principles of how you go about accomplishing or solving certain problems. Um, there needed to be more than just a statement of we're thinking about it differently or approaching it differently. There needed to be a feeling that came from it that, oh, these guys really do approach this differently. And so many people, and I would say the best example are employees in Island who,
Mhm.
upon joining and upon one of the first, meetings that I had with them would say, by the way, I had a few different options of where I should work next. And when I saw Island, I'm like, these guys are just different. They're just doing stuff differently. They're thinking differently. They show up differently. And obviously the word different can mean lots of things, but intention around how we want to approach something that may, that could be copy paste elsewhere. But for us, we wanted to deliberately try and show you a new, modern, a fresh angle, that kind of tipped us in their favor, right, for where they want to work next. And if it's doing it for people, deciding their career path, then we have to believe that it's doing that same thing for people deciding for a new innovative solution to a problem that they know they're not solving with the solutions that are out there. So that's kind of my take on, established data backed principles versus new. When is it right to push back on it? Um, I would say the only qualifying statement, and then I'll throw it back to you, is we did want to avoid overcomplicating things unnecessarily. And there are
Yeah.
times where telling a better story or doing it in a cooler way had too much of a cost,
Yep.
and not enough benefit to it. It started to feel just fancier and not better.
Yep. Yeah.
And
I
that's
could see
when
that.
we needed to push back. And actually one of the design iterations, we experienced that where we wanted to do something ambitious about showing you the inside of a browser. So we had this cool animation where we pulled
Yeah.
everything out and kind of exploded it. And we noticed that there were just too many problems with it. When it went to mobile, it behaved differently. When you scrolled on a certain dimension of screen, certain elements were cut off in a way that you couldn't really resolve. And then we realized this was too fragile, and the idea might be better than the execution. We needed to kind of evolve onwards from that.
And I think the to dig into that, to be able to give some context, when teams get into, I would say, really complex scroll jacking and like all these beautiful but interactive type of elements that are going to be really, reliant on JavaScript and things like that's all well and good, but it's how much complexity do you want to add to this kind of technical infrastructure to manage a brand at scale, right? Which we call a website. That's I think the net of it there.
Yeah.
And I think that our tech or our approach to like how data driven should a brand be is probably a little bit the idea that we tried to honor is a bit different. And so instead of obsessing about the data, it's we try to look at what we can how can we listen? How can we show up and intentionally listen? And listening happens in a lot of different ways, both quantitative, qualitative. And so when we can bring back to where you'll be sitting at the idea level, right? And like, okay, here is the feel, here is a lot of these big picture things. It's like, okay, well, how can we best listen and channel and edit that so people can finally understand and kind of put that in the context of what they're trying to do within their day-to-day lives. And sometimes there's this back and forth of, the teams where it'll be sort of an initial design or a concept, and then, we'll run multivariant tests with that. And then being able to see how these ideas are resonating. And I think that back and forth and listening definitely helps to push the work forward, gives us a sense of what really is landing, just as you talked about within like, oh, how much complexity do we want to add, or maybe we just have this as a video. But yeah, I think you guys have done a great job of finding some of these big impact moments and then also kind of getting out of the way and be like, okay, we just need to give them a list. They need to have a checklist that they're bringing to their CISO or whoever on like why Island's a great product.
Yeah, I mean, man, this is bringing back lots of intense conversations we had internally. We have a unique challenge in the sense that the entirety of what we were offering, which for most of our existence was something called the enterprise browser, was a completely new concept that while those words were familiar, what they represented was not to our main buyer, and we needed to help them understand what we meant by that. And yet there's the entire second level of that, which is, okay, what does that look like? Or like,
Mm.
what am I staring at when I'm looking at an enterprise browser? And if you're saying you're able to accomplish something like data leakage prevention or something like, an enterprise password manager, which we have extensive literature on how that's different than a regular password manager that you would use. show me what that actually means. And it was almost this chicken egg challenge we had of like, if I just show them what it does, then they won't get what the thing is. And if I don't, and if I show them first what the thing is, then they won't get what it does. And if I just show them the browser, they're going to say, well, it's just a browser. I don't get it. And if I show them all these dashboards in the back, they're going to see like, okay, so it's a SaaS platform, like all of my other tools that I have. I don't get it. And we
Yeah.
had to somehow cram that all in before someone would decide to give up and leave. Right.
Yeah.
And so, that challenge forced us. It was kind of a forcing function of us becoming really, really particular about the real estate and the sequencing of what do they need to know next.
Yep.
And if they know that, then what's the most important thing to show them next? And when do
Mm.
we think they should leave this page if they know enough and go check out something else, right? Which is really what the science of a homepage is and of a website is of the way I like to call it is like you're having a one-sided dialogue.
Mm.
You
Yep.
are talking and answering questions that you're anticipating they would have and hoping that you're right every single time or as accurately as possible. And I think that's, you know, in a way what you're talking about of taking some of the raw data or kind of the best practices that you have and infusing them into that conversation, but also keeping in mind these kind of X factors of are they feeling what I want them to feel? Are they seeing the big picture and not just absorbing the information? Are they going to want to take an action, when they're ready to, or are they not? So yeah, it's a delicate art and science for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's something I'm really proud of is it feels like, at least from my perspective, we've been able to move from this idea of a website as a brochure and a one-sided dialogue to definitely something that is more, you know, dual-sided, where there's a lot of listening that's happening both within the market, especially now as it's relating to answer engine optimization, how to think about the right types of content. What, as you're just talking about how to make sure that like the pages that are being concepted, created, and produced go through and address like those customer needs and questions so that there can be more of that back and forth. Um,
Yeah.
as it relates to, answer engine optimization, what are you seeing change for the brand that is maybe different where we are today than where we were a year ago, where there was not even this sort of an acronym of AEO?
Um, I think there are two. It's a two-part answer in my mind. Um, what we were just touching on is among the many things that a web presence is meant to achieve for a company, for a brand. It's identity and connection, like what is this company and what are they about and what do I feel about them? And then of
Yep.
course answering real questions of how do they solve a problem that I have?
Yep.
Do they do it in a way that that I don't already do it? In what way are they better? Why should I care? Are they trustworthy? Right. And let's think about those two things. When it comes to answer engine optimization, I think what everyone is noticing is that information is coming to people now and in a way that they don't need to, not nearly as much as they used to, go and find it.
Yep.
So the notion of going to a website to find answers to questions is shrinking by the day, that user behavior. And therefore the content being written on a website or even on the internet, is rapidly moving towards information that we want AI to ingest and be able to deliver accurately when someone just types a question into that answer engine, that LLM, and we want to make sure we own that answer, right? And maybe here and there will still be people, jumping on a blog article. It won't be as, lopsided necessarily, but it's certainly trending that way. Um, and therefore content should probably go up in volume and as well as optimize for the way answer engines ingest that content while not stripping away the humanity of it entirely, because there
Yeah.
will be people that will judge you based on, was that even a normal thing, way to talk. But when people do go to your website, it will be less and less about finding answers and more about making a genuine connection, or a judgment, a
Mhm.
sizing up of what is this company to me, and do they feel like a partner I would want to have? Do they have, some of the less, the other side of the brain
Yep.
stuff where I
Yep.
have answers. Now I need to fill in the rest. And that's why you're seeing more creative, risk taking, I think, in the world of branding, where you're trying, companies trying to make things more interactive or more story driven, where it's less about the actual technical information and more about, are people going to like us more and want to show, want to pay attention more the next time. Um, and even going offline, I know this isn't necessarily the conversation, but companies realizing, like, I need to find more ways to make connections to offset the fact that in the digital world, they're going to interact with information of us way more than interacting with us, because
Mhm.
there's that answer engine layer between. So we need to have events, and we need to show up in their neighborhood, and we need to find all kinds of creative ways to fill in those, missing connections, so that we could still, be as relevant as ever.
And I think, Island, just from the nature of being initially sales led, you guys did such a great job of how we think about it today in terms of these dual tracks, right? So there is a track of like what can be highly automated. Like, how can we go through and just, as you said, answer that question, make some things that are going to be found, right? But then there is another lane, which is how to be wildly human. And you guys have done an incredible job from, I feel like, the very beginning of focusing on events, real life, in person type of connections. And almost, and you talked about it a little bit, I feel like Island has, we talk about like the best brands are clubs, right? So it's something that you want to join. You guys have absolutely built this club. I know that the merch that you guys produce, it's one of the like the highest, like in demand, exactly, like in demand pieces for anyone that joins. Um, what do you see as that relationship as you guys have built the club? By the way, just the event that you guys did recently, I can't remember where it was, but like the build out of that event space, or just like the booth that you guys did, it was a Subway, right?
Yeah, the platform.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
So tell me
InfoSec in
about,
London.
yeah, tell me about that.
That was a great kind of perfect storm of creativity and execution and vision. We had, like I mentioned earlier, over the course of this calendar year, fiscal year, been evolving beyond this our original story of the browser to be a platform, because so much of the way work is happening, is evolving beyond that one square. That, there's agents on our desktop, and there's mobile, and there's all sorts of other things, and our offering evolved beyond that to a platform. And we had started down this road with events of, how do we make this less of kind of just a 3D flyer or brochure where you're just slapping information on walls, and I don't know, giving out
Oh,
lip
yeah.
balm and skin badges, but feel like you're making a real connection and a real impression on someone, that they're gonna really enjoy the fact that they came to Island and snap a picture and show their friend. And but it not just be, superficial, or kind of unimportant, but it actually be based on the actual story we're trying to tell.
Mhm.
And that's where the idea of, like, London, the InfoSec was in London. We wanted there to be a London feel to it. And this is our UK team that developed this. Ash, our leader there in EMEA sales, and Georgina, our marketing leader there in the UK. And then they thought, what if kind of we create something that blends London, and an experience unique to London, and this new concept of platform. And we kind of arrived at this funny little intersection of the London tube, right? The subway, having the word platform in that
Mhm.
terminology, and us building experience around that. And what was cool was that it was not like anything we ever did. There was no guidelines based on the Island brand for how a subway is supposed to look. So we really had to create that world from scratch, but
Mm.
still give it a sense that it was uniquely us who did it. And if another brand would have done it, it would have been completely different. And
Yep.
I think that was what we came away, most proud of, that so many people came by and said, this is the coolest thing in the room. And it was because we kind of stuck to those principles of, this needs to feel like us. This needs
Mhm.
to tell the story within the story. There needs to be something deliberate about why we're doing what we're doing. And the information of what we do and how we do it needs to kind of naturally emerge as the next step of what you would want to do after encountering us and experiencing who we are as a brand.
Yeah, and I felt like it was really effective, and, on the digital side, we could see a spike, from London, and we could measure that directly back to,
There you go.
a lot of that broader engagement, and I think that's one of the things that's really interesting now about AI is that in some ways it's making the web more human. Like where before it was sort of siloed into these different categories. Like you had a brand category and an SEO category and a PR category and an events category. And it's like now it's like, no, it all sort of it really does, like the aperture of the web is expanding. And, whenever you guys are doing, an event, and then we can actually start to see the impact from third party references out on the web, people talking about this event, and
Yeah.
it's in many ways kind of like marketing 101, which is, it's or brand 101, which it's not about what we say, it's about what other people say about us,
Yeah.
and how to be able to influence that conversation. And it's been amazing to see Island taking, I would say, very like at times modest, but almost, I would say, genuine steps at trying to both listen and then enter into that conversation. I think the example there you were giving with London of like, okay, this is London. We have a security platform. What about like, and then letting that work come from there. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. I hadn't put those things together, but that's probably why it felt so natural, and it was
Yeah.
so cool to see that out there in the world. And then again, like the data that we could see in terms of engagement and people coming and, obviously wanting to learn more, wanting to be able to have the sort of nitty-gritty, like, well, what about this? What about this? That all sort of happens there.
There's an important thing that you just touched on that I think is, it's critical to mention. Data also is changing in between the lines, because so much of, if we talk about the journey changing, of usually you have some top of funnel, something out there, whether it's social, digital banners, or, content syndicate, whatever it is, and they're trafficking you to a landing page, to your website. And there's this very linear process that we know isn't always as linear as we want it to be, but at least it's attributable, right? You kind of could see behavior in front of you, and it's what marketing, thirsts for, especially sales-led
Oh
organizations,
yeah.
as you
Yeah.
know. How can we tell what you're doing, what all that money's doing? And with this AEO piece, a lot of that is going dark, and a lot of the numbers are changing, not just
Mhm.
going invisible, but they mean different things now. So there could be way more people that went and tried to find out about Island without ever reaching our website, without ever clicking on anything. And therefore, we won't actually know, or be able to report the way we used to, how well something is working if we are still trying to measure it the same way, which is, what was the traffic or what was the click through rate, immediately following this event, or something like that. And at the same time, the traffic that does show up, the numbers that you do get, are probably qualitatively
Mhm.
way more valuable than when the only thing you could do was show up to someone's website. So you were
Yep.
getting bots, you were getting other marketers, you were getting completely irrelevant audiences showing up. And now if someone's showing up, that's a signal that it wasn't before, which is someone took the time to try and figure out who you guys were beyond the simplest way of just, asking their phone. So both of those things are actually important to acknowledge, and maybe skew a little differently as reporting starts to, change, and us trying to kind of help interpret for those stakeholders what this all means. Why are our numbers going down? Why is our traffic down 10% from last year, right? But our leads are going up from last year. But, we see 10 times more traffic of the same accounts as last year, right? Those types of things where you're noticing how the influence is and the behavior is changing, and therefore the interpretation of that behavior is also changing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just speak broadly to all of our clients is that what we are seeing is a dip in some traffic volumes, but an increase in traffic quality.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're sort of getting at there, where people are, they're starting their RFP in, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, whatever that is. They're getting that short list. And by the way, getting on that short list, I think it's like 85% of the time, whoever is in that short list gets chosen. And so the two parts that we're talking with people about is like how to be found just so people know that you're out there, and how to have some breakthrough creative work, which you and your team have been doing, and then how to be chosen, and so that we don't drop the ball, for example, when someone is coming in. And one of the things that we've been running is like a conversion rate optimization program, and then trying to just, as I said, listen to what someone's intent is, and then how to be able to respond and react, so that at that last mile that they're still getting all of that information they need, or like whatever that, and that is, I would say, sometimes not the most exciting work, but still incredibly important, if this makes sense. So that's something that, you know, it, it is about 1,000 little ways in which, we're trying to address and listen to what people are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And if we kind of follow this domino effect to
Mhm.
the very next step, which is the ones that are showing up to the website are more qualitatively significant than before. It also means the experience that they come away with when arriving at the website is all the more important to be completely on point, right? Like exactly what they need to get out of it in order for them to make the decision, because they're coming with a stronger intent of
Mhm.
getting something out of showing up. Whereas casual visitors, if something works for them or doesn't work for them, they might show up, they might not show up. They weren't probably in a position to make a decision anyways. But if someone's showing up now, it probably means they're really thinking about something. And if the journey just crushes and that experience is top notch and there's polish on everything, you might have just, that might have just been the difference between walking into an RFP 50-50 and
Yep.
65-35. And that could make a huge difference.
Yeah. I'd love to switch gears and kind of talking a bit around, immersive experience. And you guys have really been leaning into more video.
Yeah.
The video on your homepage, the video even just for people celebrating. I think you celebrating 5 years at Island.
Yeah.
Um, how have you guys been approaching that sort of video creation, both from first idea through launch and publish?
I had been a big advocate from day one, and I am by no means the exception to the rule, among brand builders, that the way people are consuming media now is video first.
Mm.
It's just exponentially more engaging when it's done right. It does so much more than another type of thing, with few exceptions,
Yep.
um, and emphasis on the when it's done right part.
Yep.
Um, and I think another part of it to kind of dig deeper is video is more revealing often, in terms of who you are as a brand, and especially when you're putting faces,
Mm.
in those videos of people behind Island, and their original thoughts and customers and stories that are unique to us. Those are things that are fabricated. They can't really
Yep.
be replicated by competitors. There's something unique about, the cost and effort of creating a video, even if it's gotten way simpler and way more cost effective, it's not the type of thing that someone will just go, oh, we'll just make that also.
Yep.
So if you put the time to make something with, you know, with production value, with a deliberate sense of what you want to do with it or what you want to get out of it, it's very hard to compete against it.
Mm.
And a great example is a podcast we just launched last week
Hmm.
called Eyes on the Enterprise. And this is an idea I had with Jody, our customer marketing lead, as we were building all these customer testimonial videos, and which is everyone does that, and it's a rite of passage, and you need it, and you
Yep.
can't not do it. But
Yep.
also, everyone knows what's about to happen. It's a guy or a woman talking about how great that company is, and it solved all their problems. And right, what's something that's going to break the mold there? That's going to feel like a breath of fresh air. That could really feel like the visitor, the viewer will enjoy, like just naturally enjoy that
Sure.
experience of watching it. And the thought came to my head of this show on Netflix called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction, by David Letterman, which
Yes.
he
Yes.
beautifully combines a typical sit down interview where he doesn't pull any punches and really gets down into the nitty gritty of things, but also um, complements that with some sort of on the street or in their world, kind of bringing outside of the sit down interview where it's either in their backyard or their favorite restaurant, or they go fishing together, or in a recording studio, right? Depending on the interviewee. And what if we could do that for enterprise leaders? What if we
Mm.
could kind of turn the traditional testimonial into actually spotlighting them and their career path and why they do what they do and what keeps them up at night and where is the world of enterprise work going? And also, what was it like to grow up in this town that we're walking in? And what memories do you have of, going to this park, every day after school, and kind of peeking into their world a little bit, which naturally both other leaders and onlookers would want to understand, what are these people like? So
Yep.
we just launched that as a way of saying, you know, it doesn't always need to just be the textbook, cookie cutter. There was a
Hmm.
problem, Island solved it. Here's how much money they saved, and
Yeah.
click here. And we're getting great reactions both internally and externally about it. And it's just a testament to, again, it's the medium being just more naturally engaging, but also the thinking about what we're going to put on that screen,
Yeah.
equally important to making sure it's something people would want to see.
Well, just getting back into this, like, be radically human type of thing within the age of AI. And, it's been cool to see Island have that drumbeat. Again,
Yeah.
mostly driven first from being a sales driven organization, but I feel like now there is such a brand driven element to Island. And obviously, you've been able to help build that. And
Yeah.
speaking of podcast, you have a podcast you've been building,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Um,
right.
talk to me about this.
Uh, a personal passion project of mine from years ago that never really had the time, honestly, or the ability to do it as a one man, you know, podcast agency, so to speak. But I always felt like, as much as there were marketing conversations going on, there wasn't really a brand conversation going on in the world of B2B software. And a lot of it was around the philosophy behind why brand building is so important,
Mm.
and a lot of what's misunderstood about how brand drives real business outcomes and isn't just kind of a nice art project that some founders care about more than others and
Yep.
some are willing to find budget for more than others. But no, there's actually a strategy here and a long game, and elements of success that literally cannot be driven by any other part of the company, including within marketing. And I decided to start a podcast called Believe in Brand that explored, from the perspective of me as a brand builder inside an enterprise software company, as well as other, CMOs, marketing leaders, brand builders, agency heads, creators, what they're encountering in terms of the challenges of building a brand, the pushback, again, trying to decipher some of the myths and misunderstandings and real practical strategies of how to do this right. And I was lucky to, I put out 6 episodes and then I had a baby and
Yeah.
went
Oh,
on paternity leave and everything went on pause. But over the course of that time, I had people reaching out to me. The former, global head of creative at Google and Pinterest was like, "Hey, let's do a podcast." The former VP marketing of Patagonia, who's now the chief customer officer at Superside. Just great personalities
hmm.
that I was lucky to intersect with and have these cool conversations with. Recorded the show, and then unfortunately had no time to do it myself, but got myself together, got a bit of a partnership with a podcast agency called Share Your Genius to help me put it out, and they're coming out this summer, and we'll see where it goes from here. Um, but yeah, more video, more conversations about brand and creative, the better. So I'd love to hear what people think, and they should tune in and see what they like.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And the idea of how brand building is changing, it's so dramatic right now. And I think that something that I see is definitely teams or agencies still trying to approach it in almost like this one-sided fashion. And I feel like a lot of the constraints that were initially within the island world, and I think a lot of your innate proclivities around how to be able to address this, and almost like jujitsu flip this, right? So like that, what was that strength is really now, a huge asset. Um, having a very distinct point of view, having something that is wildly human, being kind of in person, having this club
Yeah.
that people want to join and that salespeople want to, salespeople like design, like the whole thing. Um, what do you think kind of as we're just closing out here?
Yeah.
Uh, as we look forward into the next year, what are the things you want to look back and be like, wow, that was really cool what we've been able to build, over this past year? How do you want to look back a year from now?
Whew. Uh, Specifically inside Island, this year for sure has been about evolving our product to meet the needs of more and more massive customers in a
Yeah.
time where the ground underneath them is shifting and the needs that they didn't realize they even had a month ago are suddenly urgent. And I think I would like to look back on this period of time and be proud of how the brand helped facilitate those new products and the stories behind them smoothly, reaching market and reaching the hearts and minds of those buyers, both our existing customers and the audience at large. We had several different launches already this year and are planning several more. And one recently was a product that's literally disrupting an entire massive industry, the Island Enterprise Network. Network
Mm.
security is something that has been used for years, to inspect data and make sure, you know, uh, the traffic of that data is being
Mm.
done correctly and securely. And yet the way user behavior changed at work with agents and AI apps and communication happening off of the network and 100 times more traffic going through the network because of it. Just things
Yeah.
were breaking everywhere. And this innovation that we had where we could combine the technology we had already built with Island with a network offering that kind of intelligently routed everything in the right place at the right time all the time. So you circumvent all of these complicated things that were breaking down everywhere. Um, we built an amazingly strong story around that problem and why it's inevitable that
Mm.
the way network security is structured is just categorically unfit for the way work is evolving. And even a lot of that story didn't even have to do with the product itself and more about the story behind why an evolution is needed and why something new is needed. And I think that was our best performing asset so far and the one that's gotten the best response. And I wouldn't call that simply brand. That's the coming together of our product managers, our product marketing, our creative storytelling. You know, I was heavily involved in the script
Yeah.
writing and kind of sequencing and our marketing team promoting the hell out of it and getting a lot of bang for our buck. So yeah, I think we're just trying to build upon wins like that so that you kind of see our audience could see all of those elements that I just described coming together perfectly.
Well, yeah, I think it's that that opening of the aperture, right? And the biggest challenge that teams are facing is like how to actually be able to collaborate now. But
Yeah.
that collaboration is really it is a better together. And I think that's really what I have seen in terms of our growth is that there has to be more of that back and forth around, you know, both the story and the performance and the amplifying it and all of those things. So, yeah, congratulations on those wins. And I just want to kind of also just reiterate, thank you for jumping on and just talking today. This was like a chance where I was like, I haven't talked with you in a while. And so if you got a chance, just hang out for a second more and we'll wrap it up. I just wanted to again say thank you and it's been great to catch up.
Yeah, this is great. Long overdue, and I appreciate the partnership throughout all these years. I have to give a shout out to Jessica Rosenberg, who made the connection all those years ago, who
Yeah.
trusted in you above anyone else as the recommendation for a web partner, and it was a good recommendation. So
Yeah.
let's
She's
keep a good thing
amazing and
going.
yeah, doing awesome stuff over at AirOps.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. Well, thanks very much, Ari. Hang out for a second and we'll catch up.
thanks.
Awesome.